TF2x10 is a very fun game mode that often goes underappreciated, but like most higher art forms, there is some level of understanding that's required to fully appreciate a work in its fullest. So in this series, I'm going to go through every class in TF2x10, today being Heavy. I'm going to talk about all the weapons they have in their kit, rank them on a tier list, and talk about what you might want to use when. The tiers in this video are going to be the exact same as they've been for the rest of the series, so if you've not seen the rest of the series, I would encourage you to start at the spy video right here. But there is one more thing that has not been relevant until now that I do want to mention, which is the version of TF2x10 I am judging everything on. So in between versions of TF2x10, sometimes major buffs or nerfs to weapons happen, usually nerfs. And Heavy, I see two things on the list right now that were majorly nerfed over the course of TF2x10's lifespan. So I'm going to be judging this based on the newest version of TF2x10, which is the one that you can find by joining any random server, probably. However, I will make a note that, like, some weapons used to be really, really good. And, yeah, I'll just talk about it more when it comes up. It's also come to my attention, looking through the weapons that are on here, that there are two weapons that are different in TF2x10 that are normally reskins in, like, normal TF2, so it makes sense they didn't put it on this specific tier list. I will talk about them when they come up. There actually is one that like has a way different placement than what it's a reskin of, but just because, I mean, I can't really edit this tier list, we'll just have to remember where things are, okay? Okay, we'll work with what we have. So Heavy's role in TF2x10 is pretty similar to what it is in normal TF2, but unlike normal TF2, where Heavy is a large man with large damage, large health, and large frustration because you can't freaking move anywhere, Heavy in TF2x10 is actually pretty fast. Some of the unlockables that he has does allow him to increase his speed significantly, and he just kind of becomes a damage cannon. I mean, I put 0% skill, 100% kill on the container tier there because I thought it would be funny, but like, he really is just kind of like a W plus M1 machine. That's not to say there aren't different play styles that you can have, and I'll talk about that when like specific weapons come up, and especially more at the end, but in terms of the optimal Heavy play style, which is using your minigun, I mean, he really is a beginner-friendly class. It doesn't take a ton of skill to pick him up for the first time and start using him, but the better you get at him, I mean, there are some like tips and tricks that you can utilize to use him more effectively. But it's kind of hard to talk about that without actually understanding what the weapons do. So let's start here. Let's start with the minigun. So the minigun and the Iron Curtain, they both do the same thing, are exactly the same as they are in stock TF2, except they also have 50% faster move speed while spun up. Now what this means is that the minigun is basically like your best weapon for mobility, or I guess your best minigun for mobility, because especially if you're using some of the speed boosting melees, you don't really lose any of your speed while you're revved, and that can be extremely helpful because like staying in one place for too long in TF2x10 is kind of a death sentence. When you have people like kunai spies running around, when you have air blasting pyros, you have direct hit soldiers, generally you want to be on the move, and Heavy taking advantage of the increased movement speed he has, because he really is one of the fastest classes in TF2x10, which is kind of funny considering what he is normally. But the minigun, even though it doesn't do any extra damage, it is an amazing tool to be able to capitalize upon that. Now, because you have the extra movement speed, and because the stock minigun actually does have like, it's really good damage. I mean, like, Heavy and normal TF2 has some of the best damage output as it is, and it doesn't necessarily fall off too hard in TF2x10, especially because, like, how easy it is to close the distance between, like, you and the person you're shooting at, so you're always going to have the ramp up, you're always going to have, like, all 4 of the bullets that are coming out of the chambers actually hitting the person you're aiming at. Generally, the damage, even though it's completely unaffected, is completely fine. It holds up perfectly well. So I'm actually going to put this in meta. I think having the extra movement speed and having, I mean, reliable enough damage is extremely good. And this is my personal favorite primary for him. I think stock just gets the job done, and I like being fast. Like playing TF2x10, honestly, speed is king. You want to be as fast as possible without sacrificing too much on your end, and I think this upholds that principle pretty well. The Natasha is interesting because they end up adding a stat. I cannot cannot remember if this was on the Natasha originally, but it basically, in addition to slowing down targets, it also has plus, I think, 30 health on hit, or up to plus 30 health. It's really, really good for healing. Now, you are losing half of your damage because it has halved firing speed, but like, even with the halved firing speed, you're doing a lot of hits per second, so the healing that you get off of this is just insanely good. If you're like constantly hitting somebody, and unless you're being assaulted by like everybody on the enemy team at the same time, you're pretty much gonna live forever, especially using some of the health boosting items that he has. The Natasha is honestly just a fantastic weapon for healing, but on top of being able to make yourself essentially invincible, it's also a really, really good counter to the fast targets that are on the list, especially like Demo Knights, other heavies that are using weapons that are a lot more effective when they're close to you, which I'll get to in a minute. Scouts aren't really a huge threat, and then especially Power Jack Pyros all just kind of get obliterated by the Natasha, because like you can kind of glue them to the floor if you get like within, it's a kind of a golden distance. You don't want to get too close, but if you're too far away, then they're not slowed down enough. But if you get in that golden distance, holy crap, they really just can't move, and you just have free reign to slowly chip away at their health and kind of make them unable to function as they normally would. So like, even though the like spin up time is kind of an issue, actually, yeah, looking at the stats, I double-checked. It does have a 50% damage penalty on top, so you're only doing 25% damage, but, like, really, you're just kind of engaging in a battle of, like, volition against anybody that you're fighting. Chances are, even though, like, you're only doing 25% damage, you're healing all of the damage they're doing to you, so a lot of the time, even if people have insane damage output, they have no choice but to retreat because, like, they just can't break through the, like, 120 damage per second of healing. Probably more than that, actually. I've never done calculations, but try this thing out yourself if you don't believe me. You really are invincible, so I'm going to put this in meat. I mean, this is a fantastic side grade to stock. You're basically sacrificing damage for, like, an infinite amount of health, good utility slowing people down. Really, there's not a lot that this can't do other than just, like, efficiently dealing with damage. I think the biggest downside of the Natasha is buildings, because you don't heal off of them, slowing them down doesn't really do anything, and the damage penalty on the gun really hurts against certain buildings because of their health scaling. But, like, yeah, really, buildings are the only problem that this has. Otherwise, this just obliterates everybody very, very slowly, but it obliterates them nonetheless. The Tomislav is a very interesting weapon in TF2x10 because, to my knowledge, it's the only weapon in the game that has increased accuracy. So what actually ends up happening is this is literally a sniper rifle, because anywhere you click, all 4 of the bullets will go exactly on your crosshair every single time without fail. Now, it does have the downside of 200% slower firing speed. However, if you use this like a semi-auto weapon and you just like click rapidly instead of just like holding M1, you can actually kind of like, it's a weird glitch, but you just completely ignore the firing speed penalty and you can like basically fire as fast as you can click. Now, it does still have a 20% slower firing speed. It's only based on, like, the change from normal TF2 to TF2x10, so, like, the maximum amount of damage you're doing is still, like, the normal Tomislav damage and normal TF2, but, really, I mean, that's still good damage, especially because, like, all of your bullets are guaranteed to hit every time, assuming your aim is, like, really good. And, I mean, it also has, like, no barrel sound. I don't know how much that really benefits it, but, like, if you're trying to camp somewhere and you don't want people to know where you are, it can help. Not really a super useful stat, but between that and the, like, instant spin-up time, really, this does have fantastic damage potential. This thing does have 2 major downsides. Number 1, it hurts my hand when I use it because, like, you are clicking a lot and you're clicking really fast. So, like, think of if you've ever played, like, pre-1.8 Minecraft and that combat system and how stupid that is. It's basically that, but you also have to, like, precisely aim, so it does put some strain on your arm, I won't lie. But number 2, accuracy hurts, okay? Like, having a 100% accurate gun is not as helpful as you'd think it would be, because, like, if your aim is not perfect, having your crosshair kind of near an enemy will not make some bullets still hit. You will miss entirely, and, like, this does a lot better at longer range because you don't have to, like, move your arm a lot to hit people. If someone gets up close to you, it's a lot harder to actually efficiently use this. That being said, this does do a whole lot lot more damage than basically any other minigun at longer ranges, and the damage output that it has, even up close, you just have to aim better, frankly, but it is a little bit more hassle. It's kind of like the shortstop, I guess, is what I'm trying to say in way more words than necessary, where you do more damage at longer range, but that's not always necessarily a helpful thing. Now, because of this, I mean, there are a lot of people in TF2x10 that you don't want to get close to, and because all of your bullets hit all the time, damage fall off is pretty negatable, so I'm going to put this in always a great pick. I mean, it's like basically long-range sustained DPS, which is a niche that the heavy desperately needs, especially if he's not running any any speed boost items. So yeah, it's you can get decent use out of this. I just don't think it's as good as like the stock minigun in like probably 75% of circumstances. Okay, now we're on to the Brass Beast. So the Brass Beast is what I like to call a noob trap weapon, along with stuff like the Beggar's Bazooka, the Sandman, kind of the Machina. The Machina is still pretty good, I guess, but there are a lot of weapons that people see like being used in TF2x10, or they look at the stats and they say like, oh, increased damage or increase whatever. This must be a really good weapon, and they always try to use it. The Brass Beast kind of sucks, if we're being honest. If you are able to stand in the same spot for 12 seconds in a row and have nobody shooting at you, or if you have a medic or somebody to keep your health high, you can get a lot of use out of this thing in terms of like area defense. If you like plant yourself on top of the payload, you plant yourself on top of some control point, you can do really good stuff with this because it really just is a triple damage minigun at the end of the day. The problem is that you don't have any mobility, so you're going to be taking a whole lot of extra splash damage. Everything that I said with the minigun and why being faster helps is completely negated with the Brass Beast. It's the opposite, where, I mean, you can't really like dodge direct hit rockets. If a spy gets near you and you like, if they're using the stock knife or something, honestly, I feel like the Brass Beast can still kind of melt spies, but there's a lot of things that like you can't really avoid, and you just are kind of screwed if they happen to look at you. And especially because like if you rev up, you can't cancel the rev animation. You're just kind of stuck there for like 12 seconds if you accidentally right click. So it's kind of obnoxious to use. I don't like the feeling of not being able to move anywhere. But if you can rev up, I mean, this is fantastic damage. Or, I guess, probably a better situation is if you get a Vaccinator medic or a Quick Fix medic on your team to kind of, like, negate all of the extra damage that you're going to be taking. Then you can get a lot of use out of this, especially if you're playing defensively. On maps like Higher Tower, which is the map that I play on a lot, I don't really see this used much efficiently, but, like, on normal TF2 maps, more specifically, like, Payload, Attack, Defend, I would imagine this being really, really nice, and I actually do remember playing TF2x10 on, like, Badwater or something way back in the day, and the Brass Beast was just a menace. It's basically just a sentry, but, like, you have smart aiming with it, so I'm going to put this in situationally useful. I think that you can get some decent use out of this if you really try, but I wouldn't recommend using this over any of the other miniguns, if we're being honest. It's just like, it's kind of a meme weapon, but it's a meme weapon that does do a lot of damage at the end of the day. Alright, now we have the Huo Long Heater. If you've ever played TF2x10, you'll understand that this is a menace to the entire game because the stats that this has not only boost the flames itself to an insanely high degree, so you basically just get insta-killed if you're in the heavy's range, but it also makes the afterburn damage go way the heck up, so if you happen to brush by one of these heavies, chances are, if you're not a kunai spy, or honestly, even if you are a kunai spy, you can just kind of watch all of your health go away as you desperately try to find a health pack. This thing just does way more damage than it has any right to, and the only problem with it is that it burns through ammo in literally a couple seconds. You will go from like 200 to 0 if you're not paying attention, especially if you're using the primary fire too. I mean, the primary fire is not significantly changed. I think it's still just like the 10% damage penalty as it normally is, but yeah, if you're like WM1ing and you're also WM2ing at the same time, you're not going to have ammo unless you're using something to compensate, which also means sacrificing max health, but like I'll talk more about that with secondaries. This thing though, it's a lot of damage at the end of the day. It's like more than the Brass Beast, it's more than the stock minigun. This is almost, Actually, no, I think this is literally the highest DPS weapon in TF2x10 if you're using both the M2 and M1 functions at the same time. It does more DPS than the direct hit when you factor in reloading. It does more DPS than, like, the sniper rifles, like the classic or whatever. It's really, really good if you know how to use ammo correctly. It's one of the few things that can counter kunai spies. Really anything except for buildings which have increased max health just kind of go bye-bye. It has enough fire damage to actually penetrate through fire-resistant stuff. Not the Vaccinator, but like, I'm pretty sure the Danger Shield is penetrated through. I know it used to be, in my defense. If it's not anymore, then they patched it, so I take no responsibility for my bad opinions. But yes, this thing is just way more damage than anything else, but you can't use it, and you don't have the extra perks. It's literally just a damage stick, so it's going to the top of meta. Like, literally just use the Huo Long. The only other hidden downside that this has is that everyone on the server will hate you if you're doing well with this, so use it with your own discretion, I guess. But yeah, try this out in TF2x10. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, as you can see, the miniguns for heavy, like all but the Brass Beast, are just really, really good. Whatever they were doing with the minigun design was just cracked. All the miniguns have their own unique niche, and they're really all like side grades of one another. The difference between like even the Tomislav and the Huo Long is not super wide, so you can get use out of any. Anyway, let's go on to the secondaries now. There's still a lot of weapons left, holy crap. So the shotgun in TF2x10, I already talked a little bit about it in the engineer video, but if you weren't here for that, it's basically what it is in normal TF2, except every stat except for weapon switch speed has been increased by like 10%. It feels really nice to use because of that. It's just like, if you're used to the shotgun, it's hard to explain. It feels really, really good. However, it also has a really nice secondary stat, which is multiplying your max ammo for all of your weapons by 10. Now, on the Engineer, that didn't really do a whole lot because, like, it only affected his pistol ammo, but on Heavy, that affects minigun ammo, which, especially with the Huo Long Heater, but, like, really any minigun but the Natasha is going to appreciate this, means that you basically just have infinite ammo. Because a lot of defensive heavy playstyles involve ammo in some way, or like, I guess, ammo management, this becomes a really good choice for basically all of them, especially the Brass Beast because you can't really move, and the Huo Long because, like, you don't have any ammo management anyway. The Natasha doesn't need it. The Tomislav and the stock minigun, like, you can, like, usually conserve ammo pretty well if you're smart about it, but like with the shotgun, you don't even have to think about it, so it is kind of nice, and you have a secondary that does damage, which is always fun, so I'm gonna put this in always a great pick. The niche that it has of increased max ammo is almost universally appreciated, and I mean, it is the only weapon basically on the Heavy that does give him max ammo, which combos really, really well with some of his best weapons already, so yeah, great choice for secondary. However, if you want something that does damage, I think the Family Business is probably where it's at. The Family Business is basically just like an auto shotty on crack. You spray all of your ammo out, and it's basically just a cone of bullets. You delete pretty much anybody that you can get near. However, because there is no reload speed bonus, you have to spend a lot of time reloading if you miss. It is kind of like a single-use delete button, which I find really, really fun, especially for, like, fat scout playstyles. It does way more damage than any of the other shotguns, although I guess the stock shotgun you could make a case for, but honestly, the Family Business, if you want a shotgun that does damage for whatever reason, or if you're using shotgun-centric playstyles, which you can do. I have seen people that do that, and it's not like the most effective. It's kind of like Demo Man versus Demo Knight, where it's like one of the playstyles is definitely more of a meme than the other, but you can get a lot of effective use out of this. So I'm going to put it in... Honestly, it's always a great pick. It's just a secondary. You press 2, hold M1, and whoever you're looking at just ceases to exist. If you don't want to use the stock shotgun on, like, the Huo Long Heater, and you just wanted something that you can use as a secondary, it's a great choice. If you wanted something that you could use with the Brass Beast before you set up, it's a great choice. It's like... It's weird because it only excels in a select few situations, but, like, it really is always going to do you well. Maybe it doesn't have the utility, but in terms of damage, it's kind of unmatched in terms of shotguns go. So moving on to the panic attack. I kind of made an oopsie in my engineer video because here's where the thing that I said at the start of version differences comes into play. What the panic attack used to do was almost exactly the same as what I just said the family business does, where it fires a ton of bullets at the same time, and it reloads incredibly fast, and the only problem with it is ammo. That is what it used to do, and that is what it's done for like 95% of the time I've played TF2x10. However, apparently they updated it to better reflect the current iterations of the panic attack, and it's not very good now, to say the least. It's basically worse than the stock shotgun in every way. It has more bullets, but it also has more bullet spread, so it's like you don't really get any kind of use out of it at all. The only thing that I can think of that's like really good to use on the heavy is if you're using the Fist of Steel, because the Fist of Steel have like insanely long holster times. You can mitigate that by the instant deploy that the panic attack has. And obviously, you don't want to be having the Fist of Steel out all the time, so using the panic attack with it's a really good option. So because that is a legitimate playstyle, I'm going to put this in only 1 or 2 uses, but like, if you want a shotgun in literally any other situation but that one, pick stock. Literally, this is just, it's a bad shotgun. I'm kind of sad they nerfed it as much as they did. Really, I can't think of any reason why you'd want to use this now outside of, like, super specific play styles. Yeah, it's kind of sad what happened to this weapon, but instead of grieving, I'm going to move on to the lunch boxes because freaking food. So the sandwich is, I think, identical to the sandwich in normal TF2. However, because it's TF2x10, they literally just gave it 10 charges. So that means that you can eat the sandwich 10 times in a row, which, because of how long the animation takes to complete, means that you literally just have an infinite use sandwich. You can drop 10 sandwiches in a row, which is really, really nice if you have a pocket medic. The sandwich is just, like, all around a pretty good choice. The problem with it is that, like, there is a definitively better food item. I think, like, the niche that the sandwich has in normal TF2, which is restoring all of your health in one go, is kind of mitigated because of how they modified some of the other food options, so I don't think the sandwich necessarily has its uses anymore in terms of, like, the dominant lunchbox item. Now, with that being said, secondary that is always active, that always restores you to full health when you use it, is fine. I would like to have that over not having it, so I'm going to put this in consistently average. I mean, like I said, there are better options, but you can never really, like, go wrong with the sandwich. It really is just like a free infinite large health pack, or I guess medium if you drop it to a medic. So, good choice, but never the best. The De La Coves, on the other hand, is just disgusting, honestly. I don't know why they made it, like, as good as they did in terms of, like, some of the stuff they've added to it, but it works how you'd expect it to in the primary function of it, where your max health goes from 300 to 800 when you eat it, but instead of lasting for 30 seconds or even 300 seconds like you'd expect it to, it's just permanent. Like, you can eat it when you're in spawn, you're gonna have 800 health for the rest of that life. It's really crazy. I have no idea why they wouldn't, like, put some kind of cooldown on this. Like, it's definitively the best sandwich item, and honestly, in my opinion, definitively the best secondary because of that. But on top of that, because it restores all of the extra health that you gain, it literally just is a 500 health lunchbox. So it actually restores more health than the sandwich because you have more max health. So yeah, no doubt going in the meat tier. Ironically, the meat is not going in the meat tier, but the chocolate is. I'm going to put this above these two, but not as good as the Huolong. I think that's a fair choice for it. Although, no, I'll put it above the Huolong because this is good with every loadout, but, like, these are pretty matched. So, yeah, I think that's about fair. So, speaking of meat, the buffalo steak sandwich is kind of an interesting weapon in how they modify the stats. The main function of it, which is, like, when you eat it, you are, like, you go into sicko mode and you can, like, just mini-crit people with melees. That's worse. It's directly worse than it is in normal TF2 because the damage penalty that you take, or the extra damage that you take, is up from 25% to 250%. So, yeah, you just, like, instantly die if someone looks at you funny. But the stat that it has is also an extra 35% move speed on wearer, which it's not as good as some of the melees, but if you wanted to run a melee-centric playstyle, or if you wanted to run other melees that aren't the speed-boosting ones, then this is, like, actually one of the best secondaries because, like, it makes heavy move at the speed of, I think, a medic, I'm pretty sure. So, like, it's pretty good. The speed boost that you get is not insignificant at all. So I'm going to go ahead and put the meat in, I think, situationally useful. Ironically, with this, you actually never want to use it as intended. Whenever you eat it, you do mini crit damage. However, the damage you take is, like, crazy high. The only time that I think you could actually get use out of this is with the Fists of Steel, because, like, if somebody melees you, you die anyway. Like, the extra damage penalty, or the damage vulnerability is not going to affect you much, and you're immune to the damage anyway. But outside of the Fist of Steel, even the Warrior Spirit, I think, does enough damage on its own where you don't actually need the Buffalo Stake to do the extra stuff. And, yeah, you just, like... There's only one weapon that you actually want to eat this for. However, the speed boost you get with this is nice, and I did test. The speed boost you get with this actually doesn't stack with the other speed boosting melees, so basically just pick one or the other. Only use this if you're not using a speed boosting melee, but if you're not, and there are a lot of playstyles that allow you to not use a speed boosting melee, then you'll get decent use out of this for sure. And then finally is the second banana, which is just like the last banana I ever want to be using, because just why? Why did they massacre my boy? So the problem with the second banana is that I'm pretty sure it's glitched. I don't think it actually is supposed to work this way, but the animation plays really, really fast, which means you can just, like, literally take one bite of it, restore a little bit of health, and then keep moving if you want. The problem is that even though they, like, lowered the penalty than the healing effect that you get, because you're only taking one bite and it heals you based on how long you're in the animation, you restore like 40 health per bite. So you just have to like keep clicking if you even want to get any use out of this. It's literally just a worse version than the Delico's bar. I don't know why anyone would use this at all. I can definitely see something like this being useful in normal TF2, where it's like a healing item that heals less, but you can like distribute it more just by taking smaller bites. Yeah, it's really bad in TF2x10. It's a worse version of things that already exist. It's a waste of your secondary slot. I would never really use this, so I'm gonna put it in actively terrible. Honestly, I don't think it's like that bad. It's still a healing item, but it's literally a worse version of things that already exist, and I can't think of any situation where you'd want this over those, so I'm just gonna, we'll throw it all the way down the bottom. I don't care. Alright, on to the melees. The melees, there are two melees that are missing. I'll talk about them as they come up, and it's kind of unfortunate that I can't, like, edit this tier list base, because the melees are actually in significantly different tiers than the reskins. So, the stock fist, we'll start with this one first. The stock fists literally just has, like, knockback on hit. I guess they just wanted Heavy to be One Punch Man or something. It's kind of a gimmicky effect. I don't really see much use out of this other than, like, specific meme play styles, but, like, I was messing around with it when I was getting the footage for this, and it's kind of fun to mess around with. In terms of practical use, maybe if you just wanted to, like, sit near a cliff and just, like, punch people off, or, like, punch people into the, like, freaking buzzsaws and sawmill. I don't know. You can punch people into natural things, but outside of that, never use this. It's literally a directly worse version of the other melee, which isn't on here, but I'll show anyway, which is the frying pan / all of those reskins. So this will be a universal thing across all the videos. Because I did Spy and Engineer first, I have not had to talk about this until now. There are two different types of melee reskins. There's the Frying Pan and the Bat Out of Hell, which both have 10% damage bonus and 10% increased firing speed and fall damage immunity. And then there's the Ham Shank and all of the other ones, which have a 20% firing speed bonus and also fall damage immunity. Functionally, they're identical. I think the Frying Pan's marginally better just because you do more damage per hit. Those are, like, consistently some of the best DPS melees if classes don't have any other choices, but unfortunately, Heavy does have other choices in the form of the Warrior Spirit, and even some of the others are just really good, but I'm gonna put both the Ham Shank and the Frying Pan in only 1 or 2 uses. I mean, it's good if you want a melee that's just consistent. It does damage and doesn't have any downside, so, like, basically the Warrior Spirit. has the damage penalty, or the damage vulnerability. The Holiday Punch has problems with aerial hit detection. If you just wanted something that does damage and you don't have to think about it, then that's fine. Otherwise, never really use those. I'd put them both above the stock fists. I think the increased damage is fine, but anyway, yeah, those will consistently come up throughout the rest of the tier list videos that I do, so just keep that in mind that nobody in their right mind would put reskins on here anyway, so I'll have to, like, manually tell you about them myself and, like, just show you where they'd go for a split second. Anyway, sorry about all the confusion there. It gets worse, don't worry, but the Killing Gloves of Boxing are exactly, the Killing Gloves of Boxing, in fact, are one of the very, very few weapons in the entirety of TF2x10 where you look at that and you say, wow, this is exactly what I think it would be. There aren't any weird stats. There aren't any, like, rounding issues. It's literally just what the base weapon was multiplied by 10. Hallelujah. The Killing Gloves of Boxing are really nice because if you get a kill, you literally get 50 seconds of critical hits, which is insane with a lot of minigun options. I think specifically Stock and Tommy Slaw benefit from this a lot, although... yeah, no, the Natasha also benefits from that a lot. What am I saying? But you can use this with a family business. There's a variety of things you can do once you have the crits, and once you get that first crit, you just have to remember, like, how long the 50 seconds is, walk up to somebody, uppercut them, and then that duration refreshes. The problem with the Killing Gloves of Boxing is that it's kind of hard to get the first kill. Because of the, like, abysmally slow firing speed, you just have to hope you get a random crit on somebody who isn't paying attention. I tried for a long time to get, like, decent use out of this, and I got, like, a couple kills with this in, like, the 20 minutes that I was using it, so it's kind of difficult. But if you can get that, it's kind of like the kunai almost, where if you can get that, like, first kill, then you're going to be in really good shape for at least another minute, so I think these are fine. They're a good, like, damage option, but they're a little gimmicky to activate, so I'm going to put these in consistently average. I mean, this works well with about any loadout you're running, but you do have to sacrifice speed boost for it, which is a little bit unfortunate. You have to sacrifice, I guess, just other melees that actually do things, or do damage, and you have to run up to people and hope to get a random crit, so that's punishment itself, but if you do get the crits, then that's really, really nice. Okay, here's probably the most confusing thing in the entire video. So the gloves are running urgently. First of all, let's talk about the version differences. So the stats that they used to have are that you get the speed boost all the time, not just while they're activated, and the speed boost is freaking insane. It's plus 300%, which means you can actually... I think, like, eventually your speed caps at, like, 512 hammer units per second, but what that does mean is that you offset, like, the rev speed penalties for miniguns, and you can actually run at 512 hammer units per second with the stock minigun, while revved, of course, but that is insane. Like, you're really a speed demon with that. However, they ended up nerfing it to where you only get the weapon while active, and because there's a lot of penalties that happen while you're active, such as your max health just going bye-bye, these is kind of hard to use. I think the Killing Gloves of Boxing in their current iteration will go in situationally useful. I think I can... There are enough situations where you would want something that's, like, really, really fast, but, like, you can only use it while it's activated. Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, the speed boost is really good. That is kind of the end of story. So now we get to the biggest problem about TF2x10, which is everything is inconsistent. The developers are lazy. This is actually very funny. The Breadbite never got nerfed, so the Breadbite still does what the Gloves of Running Urgently used to do. Therefore, the Breadbite actually goes at the top of the meta tier. It's literally a pay-to-win upgrade of the the Gloves of Running Urgently. So, yeah, take that as you will. It's not that much of an upgrade because there is another weapon which does something very similar. The problem with the Breadbite, though, is that the weapon itself actually doesn't do any damage, and there is, actually, no, literally the penalties while it's activated are better. Like, you don't have to suffer as much health drain while it's active, but you actually don't have melee damage, which means you just can't run out of ammo. But that much move speed is insane, especially with, like, revving with things like the Huo Long or Stock. So it's going at top of meta if that was there. I'll get to the other, actually, you know what, frick this, we're doing this now. The reason why I don't think it's, like, necessarily pay to win or, like, stupid overpowered is because the Eviction Notice does something very, very similar. So here are the stats for it. It only has a plus 150% move speed on wear. However, when you're not revved with the minigun, that's actually exactly the same. And I tested this too, just to make sure. And I ran from like one side of higher tower spawn hallway to the other, and it took exactly the same amount of time with both. However, while you're revved, the Breadbite is significantly faster, so you do lose a little bit of speed on the Eviction Notice. The Eviction Notice, though, is actually a serviceable melee. I think it still has like slightly less damage than normal, but like you can punch people to get the speed boost, and then like that speed boost that you get actually is better than what the Breadbite offers. So it is kind of annoying to have to pull out your melee and punch someone every 30 seconds just to get the speed boost, but like I think it is like maybe not quite a side grade of the Breadbite, but it's comparable enough to where I don't think using one over the other makes a significant difference. But yes, the Eviction Notice is just a permanent speed boost that you get on wear. It makes you incredibly fast, actually one of the fastest classes in the entirety of TF2x10, and because of that, and because there isn't like any type of penalty while the weapon's not active, you just end up being a speed demon. So I'm going to put these... it's definitely in meat. But yeah, speed boost good into story. Anyway, sorry I'm like having a stroke with these. Basically, gloves are running urgently, used to be good, now they're mediocre. Breadbite never got the same nerf, so it's really, really good. And the Eviction Notice is almost as good as the Breadbite, but it's like slightly different enough to where I'd still recommend using the Breadbite over the Eviction Notice. Okay, hopefully that was a good enough explanation. Thank God. Anyway, the last three melees are also pretty interesting. So first of all is the Warrior Spirit. Another noob trap that I find is that people will want to use the Warrior Spirit and the Buffalo Stake at the same time. The fact of the matter is that, like, the Warrior Spirit does enough damage to where you're going to be one-shotting most people anyway. I think the only classes that the Warrior Spirit can't one-shot that you could otherwise with the Buffalo Stake are heavies that aren't using the Delicos. So maybe in heavy boxing, I mean, that would offer you an edge, but the problem with the Warrior Spirit is that you take like a ton more damage. You actually take the same damage penalty as you get a bonus, so you really are like living on the edge here trying to use this, but you can have a reasonable amount of fun just running around and like uppercutting people and one-shotting them. So I'm gonna put these in like situationally useful. I mean, like having damage on a heavy weapon is never bad. I mean, like if you're running like a shotgun and melee play style, go for it. I just like, I don't know. I'd never recommend doing this over miniguns, I guess is where I'll leave that. Ah, the Fists of Steel. These are another one that, like, everybody and their mother will immediately equip the second they start playing TF2x10 for the first time, because they're like, holy crap, it's literally just like, I'm invincible. I can't be damaged by anything. And I mean, honestly, for the most part, you're not entirely wrong. The problem with the Fists of Steel, though, like, being immune to range damage is insanely good, but the holster speed penalty, it takes, like, it takes, like, almost 10 seconds to holster. So if someone is, like, approaching you with a melee weapon, chances are you're not going to be faster than them, and they will just run up to you and one-shot you. So, yeah, it's kind of sad. You can negate this by using the panic attack. However, the panic attack kind of sucks. So you basically just have a mediocre shotgun in return, but, like, I actually did try that play style, and it is more effective than I will give it credit for. However, the Fist of Steel, on top of being a noob trap, are also completely just noob destroyers. Like, some people, I've literally been called a hacker because, like, people that, like, join TF2x10 off the server browser, have no idea what's going on, shoot you in the head with a sniper rifle and think, you didn't even take damage, what the heck is wrong with this game? They just accuse you of hacking, and it's really funny. And if you're fighting people who are like kind of in the middle of a big firefight and don't necessarily want to pull out their melee, it's pretty easy to just like walk up to them and just beat them up without them like really having time to retaliate. So with that in mind, I think the Fists of Steel has really, really good situational use. The problem is that you have to base your entire playstyle around the Fists of Steel, because if you're running a minigun, you want either the speed boost. Actually, no, you want the speed boost if you're running a minigun, and if you're running shotgun, well, you want a speed boost. So yeah, you have to basically just play to get kills with the Fist of Steel only, but it's a lot of fun, and you can, because you're literally invincible with everything except for melee when you have these out. I mean, this does work to reasonable success, so I'm going to put this in situationally useful. It's another one of those that's just like a lot of fun. It's just outclassed by the superior play styles for heavy. It is what it is. I mean, I'm trying to be objective on this tier list, so yeah, we'll just shove it in there and move on, I guess. And then finally, we have the Holiday Punch. The Holiday Punch is exactly the same as it is in normal TF2, except every hit crits instead of just hits from behind. So if you hit somebody, you make them laugh, and they can't really do anything. However, instead of taunt killing, I mean, you can go for the glory kills if you want. I just find it more efficient to take out the Huolong heater and just burn them to death. It's funny, because they're just sitting there laughing as you just like rev up in their face with them facing immediate danger. They can't really do anything about it. The gameplay footage that I'll probably include also has me doing that, so you can just see how much fun it is to do there. But in terms of like a pure melee weapon, I'm not sure what my thoughts on this are, if we're being honest. I think like it's literally an instant kill if you hit somebody. The counter to it, though, is literally pressing the space bar and like just bunny hopping like in sync to their melee swings. You can't always do that because like they can swing a little bit faster than you can jump, so eventually it will desync and they'll hit you. But like if you're also attacking them back, they just don't really have any like opportunities to do stuff. And it's not an instant kill to like buildings. It's not an instant kill to like spies who are disguised. There's a lot of problems that occur when you're running this, and it is risky to do, but it's a very, very fun play style, kind of on par with the Fist of Steel. And you don't really have to sacrifice, although yeah, you kind of do. So it's gonna just go right next to the Fist of Steel. I think these are pretty comparable play styles. It's just that like one is defense and one is offense, and I guess like really all three of these melees are you kind of have to use them the same way. But yeah, just if you're not playing a melee-centric playstyle, you won't get as much use out of these. Alrighty, that is the tier list for heavy. Now, I'm actually going to sort these in their tiers right now because I've not been doing that. I'll put these here. I'll move this up. And yeah, I think that's pretty good. So now to talk about when you would want to use these weapons, I'll just kind of gloss over this quickly because I've kind of been doing that throughout the video, but like really the things in the meat tier, the melee and the secondary here, just use these all the time. Heavy's best play style is minigun centric. If you're not using both the Delico's bar and the either Eviction Notice or the Breadbite, what are you doing? Those are by far the most optimal play style. It's extremely effective. It allows you to survive and be really fast. And like, honestly, the reason why Heavy's so good in TF2x10 is just because like, really he has the trifecta. He has speed, damage, and survivability. So by unequipping either of the things in the meat tier, you're kind of sacrificing one of those corners of the trifecta. The only time that you shouldn't be using the Delico's bar is if you're terrible at ammo management and you want to use the Huolong. I think that's a great excuse to use the stock shotgun. Otherwise, I would just stick to the Delico's bar. And in fact, there actually is a glitch that I should mention because it does help. If you suicide on the ground with the Delico's bar, or whichever other secondary you want to use, you eat the Delico's bar and then pick up the other weapon, you keep the 800 health, but then you can also use a different secondary. So if you wanted to like have the 800 health and the family business, or like and the speed boost from the buffalo steak, there are plenty of ways to do that, but it does mean that each respawn time takes like 3 times as long. So yeah, it's not ideal, but it does allow you, if you're like really dominating dominating a server, it kind of helps you entrench that domination a little bit more. Assuming you're using things in the way that God intended, though, just use the Delico's bar and the Eviction Notice, like, good God. I kind of mentioned the trifecta earlier of, like, damage, mobility, and survivability, and honestly, these 3 miniguns all offer you a boost to one of those. Huolong is easy damage, the stock minigun is easy mobility, and the Natasha is easy survivability. And because of that, Heavy has a really, really good selection of miniguns to choose from. You can just choose them based on what you want the most, or like if you're using the Huolong and are just like, oh well, I'm dying a lot. What should I do about this? Well, then switch to the Natasha. Pretty easy. Or if you're using the Natasha and you're like, well, I'm really slow, you can just switch to stock. I personally think stock is the best because it offers like the best mix of all of them, but I think objectively speaking, the Huolong is supreme. Then you can also use the Tomislav too, because like it does offer a very solid niche of long-range engagement, meaning that you don't actually have to get near a lot of the people that might want to cause you bodily harm. And if you are like really just wanting to meme around or defend a point, then you can go for the Brass Beast. Honestly, you should be fine with one of these 3 in the meat tier, but other than that, just do whatever you want. In terms of secondaries, I mean, like I mentioned, just use the Delicos or the stock. You could use the Family Business too if you wanted to play like a Fat Scout playstyle. Fat Scout is extremely fun in TF2x10. Honestly, all of Heavy's like alternative playstyles are really fun. And then, I mean, you can also use the Buffalo Steak if you're doing a melee-centric playstyle and want the extra speed versus the health. Other than that, I wouldn't really consider using, like, the Sandwich or the Banana ever. And then in terms of melee, I mean, like, every melee does something different. You'll just have to play around with them to see which one you want. Again, if you're playing, like, a minigun-centric playstyle, pick the Eviction Notice or Breadbite, you dummy. But if you're not playing those things, you can mess around with it. You can have fun. Heavy has a lot of variety in what he's doing, and even though some of his weapons are not necessarily the most optimal for, like, good gameplay, they're fun. You can just pick them based on what you want to do, and you'll get moderate success out of them. So, honestly, out of all of the classes, Heavy is definitely the most geared toward, like, just try it yourself and see what you like. So anyway, thank you for watching the ×10 tier list. These are a lot of fun to make, and I'm glad to shed some light on some of the more intricate details of this game mode, because like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, not a ton of people really know what's going on with this mode, so I'm kind of glad to get other people into it. I've kind of decided a soft order that I'm doing things. I think the next video that I'm going to be doing is Soldier or Pyro. It just depends on which gameplay footage I feel like recording. Let me know what one you want to see first, though. That may influence what I do. Like this video and subscribe if you haven't, because trust me, I will be doing more of these, so don't go away after this one's done. And most importantly, though, have a good one.